How do children learn to manage money? At one time, schools in America taught children how to manage money. I know that for a fact because as a boy, for a few weeks at one of the schools I attended, for a few weeks, every day for a few minutes, money management was taught to our class. Someone came and taught us how to manage money. And that has impacted my life all life long. The skills that got me started as a boy helped me about managing money. But often it's parents who really impact the children about how to manage money. The apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And so, how the parents manage money often is how the children will grow up and manage their money. And so, I've got a little list here of some ideas for you to think about, you moms and dads who are listening, and you prospective moms and dads. I want you to think about how you can impact your children about managing money. Idea number one. Rather than giving your children allowance, consider giving them little jobs called chores. It could be cutting the grass, it could be raking the yard, it could be weed eating, it could be working the flower garden. There's a lot of different chores that you might want to, quote, hire your children to do. Now, I think all children need to work to help keep the house clean and orderly and so forth like that without being paid. But rather than just automatically giving children an allowance, that, Dad, it's Friday, I want my allowance. Rather than doing it that way, consider having a list of chores, and if they've done their work, they get their little payment. I'm afraid we've got a lot of people in America that their moms and dads never did that with them, and now they're looking to the government to take care of them. And I think that's a terrible, terrible habit. I believe able-bodied men ought to work. The Bible never tells us that we're to pay everybody's bills that don't even try to work. We're to help those who can't help themselves. We're not to help those who simply won't help themselves. And so consider having chores for your children where that they get paid and earn a little something. And then number two, teach them not to waste. Teach your children not to waste. Several studies have been done that show that Americans waste half of their food budgets. Half. And, you go to the store and you have impulse buys and then you never use that. You never eat leftovers. I don't eat leftovers. Well, maybe you should consider that rather than just squandering things. All of us going to have some waste. All of us have a little bit of waste. But let's try to manage, especially teaching our children to manage their resources properly. As a child, I was told not to leave a light on in a room if I was not in the room. As I left the room, I was to turn the light off. And all life long, I've followed that little teaching. Now, has it made a huge difference in electric bills? Probably not. But it helped me with a concept of not wasting. And so I want to teach our children not to waste. Number one, consider paying them for chores. Number two, teach your children not to waste. Number three, teach them to save, to buy things. As a boy, I remember there was this comet called Comet Kohoetek. That was the name of it. And the news for days talked about this giant comet that was going to come through, and Americans were going to be able to see it at night. And they encouraged Americans to maybe acquire a telescope so that you can see this comet better. And so for days I thought, I want a telescope. I want a telescope. I want a telescope. Well, my dad talked with me about it because I'm sure I begged my dad, Dad, would you buy me a telescope? Would you buy me a telescope? My dad said, let's make a plan on how you can earn a telescope and save for a telescope. Comet Gehoatech came, and it really was not a big deal. But I've even remembered the name of that comet all these years later. I mean, 45 or 50 years later, I remember the name of that comet because my dad taught me about saving for an item that I really wanted that was a little more expensive. I bought a nice telescope, and we still have that telescope today, all these years later. I've enjoyed looking at Saturn and different things through that telescope. But my dad taught me about saving for a project. Rather than my dad just buying it for me, he taught me a way to save for things. So teach your children how to save. Then next, I think it'd be a good idea for our children to hear mom and dad having some financial planning. I think it'd be good for them to know that the family lives on a budget. We plan to pay all of our bills on time. We pay the mortgage on time. We pay the utility bills on time. We just pay things on time, and we have a budget that we live within. I think it would be very good for the children to know that our family, we live on a budget. I think the general knowledge of that will help children to know that, hey, when I become an adult, I probably need to design a budget myself and live within my means and live on a budget. And the word budget's not a bad word. It's a great word. And our children need to learn about budgeting. So I think our children just hearing and maybe even seeing little portions of our financial plannings would be a good thing. And then teach your children about saving for retirement. I watched my dad get up every single morning and get ready to go to work. He worked at the shipyard. He built ships for the United States Navy. And I saw my dad get up every single morning, early in the morning, and my dad worked very hard, physical labor and mental labor. And along the way, my dad would talk to me about different things about his job, including he told me about this thing called the Thrift Plan. At his job, his church had the Thrift Plan. And he said, son, let me tell you about this Thrift Plan that I'm in. And my dad told me about it. He told me that his company had offered him that if he'd save automatically a small percentage of his earnings, that they would match it. And it was called the Thrift Plan. And he said, son, it's just like having an automatic raise. I save 3% and they match it with another 3%. And said, son, I'm going to make sure that I do that. It's a really good idea, and it will help me save for my future, for our retirement, for our later years. My dad told me about that Thrift Plan, and my dad participated in that. My dad retired about 25 years ago from the shipyard. And he had money at retirement, though he was a common man, a wonderful man, a great man, but ordinary as the world looks at it. For me, extraordinary. But as the world looks at him, they'd say, yeah, that's a common man. Yes, but he had some discipline. He thought ahead, and he was in that Thrift Plan. So teach your children about saving for retirement. And let me talk with you about letting your children see you work, and not just work hard one day, but work hard all life long. Our children need to learn a work ethic. So not just money management, but how to even earn money by working. Then lastly, I think you ought to really teach your children about giving to the work of the Lord. I think your children need to know that your family is a tithing family. We believe in tithing. We believe in giving 10%. But beyond giving just 10%, our family, we believe in giving God offerings. So we give God our tithe, but children, we want you to know that we also give to missionaries, and we give to the building fund. And when there's special needs, our family wants to participate. We always want to be generous in our giving in the work of the Lord. The children ought to know that. And so let's talk to our children about finances, and let's grow up another generation that will handle their finances in a way that would please the Lord. May God bless.